Hey there, and welcome to my channel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about some colonial So let's get started. When we think of the colonial period, especially in America, we often think of hard work, religious fervor, and political turmoil. And while these are all accurate characterizations of life during the colonial era, there was still plenty of time for fun and games. In fact, the colonists' favorite pastimes were often quite similar to our own modern-day hobbies. There were even some distinctly colonial sports that were popular at the time, but have since fallen out of favor. So grab your musket and prepare to don a tricorn hat, because we're about to embark on a wild ride through some colonial The first pastime we will be discussing today is hunting. Now, before the days of video games and Netflix, people had to find other ways to entertain themselves. And what better way to pass the time than by going on a thrilling hunt? For the colonists, hunting was more than just a fun activity. It was also an essential part of their survival. They hunted for food and clothing, and they also hunted for sport. The most common animals that were hunted included deer, wild turkeys, squirrels, and rabbits. Deer were especially popular because they provided both food and leather. Wild turkeys were also a favorite target because they were large and meaty. Squirrels and rabbits were easier to catch, making them a good choice for new or inexperienced hunters. One of the most exciting aspects of hunting was the dogs. Bloodhounds were used to track animals, while terriers and beagles were used to flush them out of hiding. The dogs would bark and bay at the wounded animal until it was finally caught. When the animal was brought down, the hunter would then either kill it or attempt to capture it alive. If the hunter was lucky enough to catch an animal alive, he would then either keep it as a pet or use it for food. Sometimes the colonists would also hunt larger animals such as bears and wolves. These animals were much more dangerous, so it took a more experienced hunter to take them down, but the thrill of the chase was definitely worth it. Overall, hunting was a beloved pastime of the colonists. It was a chance to test their skills against nature, and it was a necessary activity for survival. So next time you go on a hunting trip yourself, take a moment to appreciate this rich history. Alright, now let's talk about racing. Racing was another popular pastime among the colonists. They loved nothing more than to get out on the open road and see who was the fastest. Of course, there were no paved roads or traffic lights to worry about, so racing was much more dangerous in colonial times. Still, people loved the thrill of the ride and the chance to show off their driving skills. The most popular type of racing was stagecoach racing. This involved driving a horse-drawn coach at top speed over long distances. The coaches were usually large and heavy, so it took a strong team of horses to pull them. Stagecoach racing was not for the faint of heart, but those who participated in it quickly became addicted to the excitement. Another popular form of racing was riding races. These were races for horsemen only, and they were usually held over shorter distances. Riding races were more about skill than speed, as riders had to navigate a course that often included jumps and other obstacles. Those who competed in riding races were often considered to be the best horsemen in the colony. Finally, there were foot races. As you can imagine, these were races for people on foot, and they were usually held over short distances. Foot races were a great way to test one's speed and endurance, and they were also a lot of fun to watch. The colonists would often place bets on foot races, which added to the excitement. As you can see, racing was a popular pastime for the colonists. It was a chance for them to show off their skills and compete against each other. Racing was also a very social event, and people would often gather from all over the colony to watch the races and place bets. The thrill of the competition was something that everyone could enjoy, regardless of whether or not they were participating. Alright, now let's move on to our next topic, which is rough recreation. Rough recreation was another popular pastime for the colonists. It might seem odd to us today, but back then people enjoyed a good brawl as much as they enjoyed a good game of chess. Of course, this type of recreation was not for everyone, but there was certainly a segment of the population that got a kick out of throwing down. One of the most popular forms of rough recreation was bare-knuckle boxing. This was a no-holds-barred style of fighting that was very popular in England, and it made its way to the colonies as well. Boxers would fight each other with their fists only, and there were no weight classes. This meant that smaller fighters had to be incredibly skilled in order to compete. Bare-knuckle boxing matches were usually held in public, and people would bet on who would win. The fights could go on for hours, and sometimes the boxers would be so exhausted that they would actually have to be carried out of the ring. Another popular form of rough recreation was wrestling. This was a more gentlemanly pursuit than boxing, but it was still very physical. Wrestlers would try to pin their opponents to the ground, and the match would end when someone was able to stay on the ground for 3 minutes. Wrestling matches were also popular events at county fairs and other gatherings. Finally, this was a blood sport in which 2 roosters were placed in a pit and then set upon each other. The object of the game was to see which rooster could stay in the pit and fight the longest. Cockfighting was outlawed in some colonies, but it continued to be popular nonetheless. Macaws were held in secret, and people would bet on which rooster would win. As you can see, the colonists enjoyed a variety of rough recreations. It might seem odd to us today, but these activities were very popular at the time. People enjoyed the physicality and the competition of these sports, and they also liked the excitement of betting on the outcomes. No matter what form it took, rough recreation was a beloved pastime for the colonists. And that brings us to the end of this episode on colonial pastimes. We've covered a lot of ground, or should I say road, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about some of the favorite hobbies of the colonists. Remember, if you like what we do here, you can always support us through various platforms. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.